Hello, and welcome to the Superliminal Developer Commentary. I'm Albert, Game Director of Superliminal. Myself and the rest of the team will be popping up every now and then as you play. With subtitles open, you can see who is talking and what their role on the game is.
Our patent-pending Somnosculpt technology provides safe and effective dream
Ja, und damit
therapy
herzlich
while
willkommen
rest
zu
in the comfort of our
Superliminal,
flagship clinic.
dem letzten Part,
Right next to the secondary
wo wir mit
overflow
aktivierten
parking lot of the
Entwicklerkommentaren
University Medical
spielen.
Center. Somnosculpt will make your dreams come true.
Ich hoffe, das wird nicht allzu lange dauern, weil ich wollte das eigentlich in ein Video packen, welches heute auch...
Hi, my name's Chris. I was the producer and designer on Superliminal.
Hi, this is Will O'Neill, and I was the writer on Superliminal.
Okay, so that very beginning of Superliminal is actually one of the last parts we finished. Throughout development, we created so many different introductions to the game. Not all of them were cutscenes, like that one, but we ended up feeling that that in-game video sequence offered a really smooth on-ramp that let us set the framework for what's to come. By keeping it grounded in the world, rather than just a video, we felt it to be a good way to get you situated in the game and aware of what's up.
So, when I wrote the opening line of "Are you filled with feelings of self-doubt" at the beginning of the game, I was definitely envisioning a player immediately, unconsciously responding with yes. And of course, the purpose of that is to sort of pull you into the idea that you're not playing a character in the game, that it's you inside this experience. And of course, making it clear that the clinic itself is not necessarily the safest or most prestigious place to get treated creates an immediate tension, especially when the very first thing you do in the game is accidentally sign away all of your rights.
Ja, tatsächlich habe ich genau das so auch gefühlt, wie die es erzählt haben. Und habe aus Versehen ja direkt unterschrieben gehabt.
A lot of people ask about how the resizing mechanic works. The concepts are actually quite easy. To keep an object looking the same, assume if we move the object twice as far away, it just needs to be twice as big. It's all proportional. Interestingly enough, this also works no matter what field of view you use. The hard part of this mechanic isn't the actual resizing. It's trying to figure out where the object needs to be. To do this, you need to test a weirdly shaped object with a weirdly shaped background, and trying to find the right ratio for the object to be big enough to not touch anything, while keeping everything accurate and optimized.
Hey, this is Matt. I did the music and sound. This very first jazz piece in the game is called I Wonder, and if it sounds at all familiar to you, that's because you just heard its melody and chord progression in the Somnosculpt TV jingle back at the start of the game, which I called Smooth Wonder.
Ja, die Musik hier ist echt großartig geworden. Das muss man denen lassen.
Hi, I'm Logan, and I'm level designer on Superliminal. A difference with the main resizing mechanic in this game is how much freedom it gives the player. This puzzle is a good example. In most puzzle games, if you put an object on a button in this scenario, the object doesn't need to be moved anymore. The key to unlock the door removes the key from the problem space. But unfortunately, in our game, you can just turn around and grab the object from any distance away. Therefore, we've gotten good at adding barriers in many places so people won't carry an object through all puzzles forever.
Hi, my name is Alex, and I performed gameplay programming on Superliminal. When I joined the project, there weren't really any menus except the absolute bare minimum to get the player into the game, and there wasn't any keyboard support either. So the first order of business was to add proper mouse and keyboard support to the title and pause menus. The hardest part was supporting switching between the two on the fly, because you never know when the player is going to do it, and it could lock them out of the game. With that foundation laid, I started working on controller support. In terms of the menus, there wasn't much work to do. The pad basically acts like a keyboard. But gameplay was quite a different story. As we approached launch, we all agreed that controller support wasn't quite up to par, and so we shipped without it, adding it around a month after launch. To make controllers feel as good as mouse and keyboard, I wrote a bunch of code to modify how controller input is interpreted. For mouse and keyboard, input is more or less one-to-one mapped to player movement. So you move the mouse and the camera turns. But that doesn't feel good with controllers. Trying to pick up a very small object, say a chess piece, could be quite finicky. In the end, I made it so looking around accelerates the longer the stick is pressed, and behaves differently based on whether you are looking vertically or horizontally, and also while you are holding an object. Probably the biggest change was a quote-unquote auto-lock feature, which draws the focus to a grabbable object as your cursor gets closer to it. All these changes culminated in controllers feeling much more accurate and satisfying.
Ja, Controller spiele ich nicht.
Throughout each level, we try to give subtle hints on which objects are grabbable and which aren't. This is more of an introductory level, so it doesn't have a lot of objects, but you might notice that grabbable objects, in yellow, are complementary colors to the background colors of green and beige.
This is a dream. You did not wake up. Please complete the remaining
Tatsache.
orientation activities.
There's quite a bit of foreshadowing throughout this level. We wanted to hint at the mechanics that are going to come later in the game. For example, the projection, the clone, and the portal hallways later on. Little things like that feel like visual treats when you're playing this level, but serve as fun reminders when you play for a second time that we kind of told you the whole thing all along.
Warning, you have deviated
Schade,
from
ich
the
dachte, hier wäre vielleicht
orientation
auch noch
pathway.
was.
At the Pierce
Hi there,
Institute,
I'm
patient
Steve,
safety
I'm the
is
art director of
considered an
Superliminal.
appropriate priority tetrahedron. A
One of our
variable
main
degree
visual
of force
touchstones for this
is
section
authorized
centers around a
for
couple of
certain
silly
situations.
questions.
Please return
What
to
would
the
someone in the
orientation
early
pathway.
90s dream up as a futuristic testing facility? And how could they build that on a shoestring budget or with infinite time? I feel like those two questions were ones we actually asked ourselves more than once during the process of making this game.
When we were playtesting, we realized that players were getting tripped up on different aspects of the resize mechanic. So we tried to make each puzzle in this level teach a specific action. The cheese puzzle is our way of forcing players to make something from very small to very big, and the puzzle after that is the opposite. This broken window puzzle is to teach you how to make things small and fit through a hole, but at a distance, so you can't simply walk up to it.
We had this looping hallway for a while, but it was very nondescript and players got confused on where they were and they would get turned around. So our artist Steve helped mock up some windows and landmarks so people can tell where they are. Immediately, we found that playtesters weren't getting lost anymore and understood the moment. Our core game mechanic is so novel that we immediately drew comparisons to other quasi-sci-fi puzzle games. And since our game is about playing with and subverting expectations, we wanted to lean into that and start the first level with a kind of test chamber aesthetic and immediately break that going forward. Narratively, this space is what Dr. Pierce planned to have his dream therapy program look like before it all went wrong.
Please stand by for polite recognition on your completion of the Somnasculpt orientation. You did it. To maximize the time allotted for your therapeutic journey,
Yes,
please do
keins?
not delay in proceeding through the final doorway as indicated.
Mein Gott, mach diese Kackwand da weg. Muss ich es echt noch größer machen? Damit es einen größeren Impact bekommt. Danke. Ist hier noch irgendwo ein Entwicklerkommentar? Weil die sind echt cool. Aber auch interessant, dass sie sowas überhaupt eingebaut haben, ne? Ist das erste Spiel, das ich jemals spiele, wo sowas gemacht wurde.
The reason we ended up with this sleep clinic section is because we wanted to convince players that they might have actually woken up from the dream. So we don't have any dreamlike mechanics you can play with until you get to the vending machine. Later on, this becomes a hub you come back to in order to emphasize the feeling of waking up from a dream within a dream.
You want the first moment of people walking into this hallway to feel different from other first-person puzzle games. This hallway is designed to feel surprisingly warm, which helps make it feel a little bit surreal, and a little bit odd. Throughout the game, we're bouncing between these two feelings, the feelings of warmth and coldness.
So my brief for the jazz part of this soundtrack was always to do my best to emulate the iconic solo jazz piano sound of the great Bill Evans. For that, I listened to an album called Alone. My process was to try to compose my own superliminal jazz standards. I fleshed out the first chorus and melody. Later on, I workshopped and recorded with my good friend John Reeves. And I'm so glad I did, because his piano skills are so much better than mine.
Also da muss ich nochmal zwischendurch sagen, der Soundtrack ist große Klasse geworden. Respekt dafür. Abgesehen davon, dass ich kaum Musik kann, sondern sie eher höre als spiele. Es ist halt wirklich ein Meisterwerk gewesen. Oh, passt das vielleicht sogar perfekt? Ist halt, er passt halt auch sehr gut hier dazu. Haben wir hier irgendwo noch einen geheimen Entwicklerkommentar? Nee, scheint nicht so. Okay. Also man merkt, dass hier viel Liebe
My name is Dr.
reingesteckt
Glenn
wurde.
Pierce, and I'd like to talk to you about being special. So special, in fact, that we have no idea where you are. But not to worry, we're working on it.
Muss doch jetzt irgendwo eigentlich noch mal so ein Ding sein, oder nicht? Nee, kein weiterer Entwicklerkommentar. Ich hätte gelacht, wenn einer in hier dem Würfel drin gewesen wäre.
Hi, my name is Ryan, and I was the principal artist on Superliminal. Optical's pink hotel hallway was the first area we nailed down visually and served as a starting point for how we approached the art for the rest of the game. We wanted enough decoration for it to be interesting to the player, yet it couldn't have too much visual noise, or else the player would get lost and overwhelmed. We made interactable objects the complementary color of the surrounding environment, which helped them pop more and feel more important. After we were happy with how this part of the game felt, the rest of the locales came together much quicker, and we required less iteration.
Haben die auch irgendwas hier zu den Räumen gesagt?
Hi, my name is Phil Fortier, and I was the graphics programmer on Superliminal, and I also worked on some of the Easter egg design. So one day, for whatever reason, I was looking up reference material for astral planes on the internet, and one of the results was the astral plane that appears in the TV show The OA. And at the same time, we were trying to figure out different optical illusions we could use for the Easter eggs that were different from the main gameplay. And the astral plane in the OA has stars and a reflective floor, and so that was kind of the inspiration for the star rooms here. And the goal for these was that they would be hidden in plain sight, so you could play through the game and not even notice them if you're not being careful and observant. But if you look around, then you might find one.
Ja, ich hab bisschen sehr
The way we
gebraucht.
made the star rooms try to fit into the game narrative is that Dr. Pierce, while designing these dream levels, it's a lot of work, so occasionally he would need to take a break, just lie down, close his eyes, meditate a bit, and so he hid these star rooms in the levels that potentially only he could find. And it kind of reminded me, I've been to MoMA in New York once, and they had a relaxation room that was kind of dark, and people could lie on the ground and look up at, I don't know, projected things on the walls. And that was kind of like the visual thing I was going for.
Oh, cool. Diese ganzen Ideen dahinter finde ich nice. Und wie die sich haben inspirieren lassen.
So in this warehouse, you'll notice that there are actually 4 exits to the room, and the level geometry on the other side of the exits would actually overlap if it existed in real space. So to make the level design a little easier, we used our portal tech here. So the exits to the room when you leave the room are actually in vastly different physical locations within the level, but hopefully it should be all seamless for the player.
Nee, ist es auch nicht.
Before you grab the moon in the next room, please notice that it looks quite far away. An interesting fact is that it actually isn't that far at all. But because the moon's position is moving with your position, it seems to be infinitely far away.
That should trigger your subconscious to gradually wake you up.
This puzzle has the problem of requiring the room to not have a ceiling, which resulted with players wanting to escape the room. In a later update, we added a secret area above this room and a bunch of other secret areas based on where we saw players going.
Ja, das haben sie auch gut geschafft. Und offensichtlich wollten die Spieler dann den Raum verlassen nach oben hinaus. Hatte ich ja dann auch gedacht. Nicht da hoch. Und da gehen wir jetzt auch noch mal hin. Ich muss nur noch mal... So. Nein. Vielleicht hilft mir aber der Würfel mal wieder. Der hat mir beim letzten Mal auch gut geholfen, da hochzukommen. So wird er mir aber nicht helfen. Ich muss das Ganze schon nur so, dass es unterhalb der Fenster ist. Ach komm. Wie habe ich das denn beim letzten Mal geschafft? So. Jetzt bin ich doch mit jeder Ecke. Genau. Ah! So, die einzige Frage, die sich mir nämlich stellt, ist... Haben wir hier oben noch einen... Nee. Wir haben keinen weiteren Entwicklerkommentar hier. Schade.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce.
Schön, dass das
In
dein
the
Name
event
ist.
that this elevator does not wake you up, please don't interact with anything that strikes you as psychologically significant.
Haben wir noch welche hier? Von den schönen Entwicklerkommentaren? Allein hier, der war so gut versteckt. Und ich glaube, das war der erste, den ich gefunden hatte, ne? Nichts mehr dazu zu sagen? Schade.
This is an automated message for all patients who attempted to use an alternate pathway to access the next phase of Somnasculpt therapy but who have become trapped in a dream state paradox instead. Your decisions imply a failure of orientation, which reflects negatively on the standard orientation protocol. You will rectify this failure immediately.
So the standard orientation protocol character is obsessed with proper orientation, and that makes her kind of thematically antagonistic to the idea of truth being, intrinsically tied to perspective. But to me, the fun part of it was writing her as being cruel without there being any actual malice to it. Like, she has nothing against you personally. Her programming simply can't see beyond proper orientation as being the only thing of any value to a Somnasculpt patient whatsoever.
An early challenge we had for creating the art for Cubism was how to approach the space and make sense of it. We started taking it a bit too literally. For example, how could we make sense of the door being so high up? Why would it be built this way? The solution we arrived at was simply not to make sense of it, because it shouldn't. We created a simple museum aesthetic that wouldn't get in the player's way of experimenting with and enjoying the puzzles. Sometimes keeping it simple is the way to go.
Between the colorful dream spaces, we have these, what we call back areas. These back areas serve as the backdrop to everything. They are where the dream spaces are built, and also the service hallways in between them. We wanted to give them a colder, darker feel to contrast with other spaces in the game. But we also wanted to keep a man-made feel, as if people were just here moving things, creating these spaces, doing work a second before you arrived.
Yeah, it reminded me a little of Charlie Kaufman's Synecdoche, New York, that idea of building a world inside of another world.
Originally, we had little plaques indicating exhibits within the museum, but we felt it was a little bit too on the nose, so to speak. You are the main exhibit, so I imagine the players wandering around a game with an exhibit plaque hanging around their necks.
Ja, viel reden werde ich selber wahrscheinlich überhaupt nicht. Ich überlasse größtenteils halt den Entwicklern das Wort heute.
Please note that a reluctance to volunteer for the
Not all of our interesting perspective moments can be built into puzzles. Some are just great moments that break your expectations. This level interprets a cube in multiple different ways, and even though none of these are difficult puzzles, they all work together to create a whole series of back-to-back surprise moments. It was fun finding the balance of making it feel like someone was messing with you, without making it feel like the cube is sentient.
Ja, hier der Würfel war ein Überraschungsmoment zum Beispiel. Die haben es echt gut hingekriegt. Wie oft stand ich da? Was? Wie? Das haben die richtig gut gemacht. Also ich schätze denen ihre Worte sehr wert. Und finde, die haben es echt gut gemacht.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and despite touring the Waterfall Serenity Zone in the previous section,
This level came about because we explored the idea of the game being an anthology of different stories, one story for each level. This level was the horror level, and I immediately knew what it would be about, getting the player to be scared of their own shadow. None of the scares are actually real, but the player doesn't know that right away. We scrapped the anthology idea, but this level worked so well that we kept it. One aspect we wanted to explore and draw from was movie scene cuts, basically how a match cut in a movie might make sense in a game. This next moment is a good example. Carefully watch the cloud in the distance. You'll see that it cuts to a new scene.
Mhm.
Boo.
Ja, da habe ich mich tatsächlich sogar erschrocken. Das haben sie auch gut hingekriegt. Muss ich den echt lassen? Ach ja, das ist der Raum. Wie, kein Entwicklerkommentar zu dem Raum? Das ist ja jetzt ein bisschen enttäuschend, finde ich.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and I'd like to talk more about the feelings of worthlessness and self-doubt I mentioned before. You feel this way because you want the kind of happy life you see all around you. The kind you know everyone else is enjoying. And that's exactly why we're here to help.
Ja. Ich will noch mehr Entwicklerkommentare. Die sind echt gut. Das hilft, das Spiel zu verstehen. Und den Grundgedanken hinterm Spiel.
Warning. You are advised to
The object used in this puzzle was originally a flashlight, but unfortunately, because of how the mechanic works, it always placed the flashlight at the end of the room, which is not a particularly useful position for a flashlight. We tried a couple of things, but finally decided to switch to an object that could glow from both ends.
Ja, das habt ihr gefunden. Das Ding ist perfekt dafür gemacht. Hier machen wir dann auch nochmal den. Hier war ja nichts, ne? Nee. Aber die hatten auf jeden Fall Spaß beim Erstellen, das merkt man.
Did you know that unintentional multi-dream layering occurs in less than 1% of patients? This correlates strongly with the 99% of
Das ist mir nie
patients who are
aufgefallen, dass
able
das
to
Messer
follow
plötzlich weg
simple
ist.
instructions from the standard orientation protocol.
When I prototyped this part, there was going to be a shadow of a monster on the wall that turned out to be a bunch of random objects when the lights turned on. The shadow always looked silly though, so eventually the reveal became the blood actually being red paint.
This room was one of the biggest technical challenges we had in the game.
Originally, this was one huge room, but turning our dynamic lights all on abruptly killed the frame rate, so we ended up chopping the room into smaller areas so we could hide and unhide objects from the player's view once the lights turned back on. This would lessen the amount of objects getting hit by lights at the given time, thus saving on performance.
Yeah, I remember Phil even tried teleporting the player to a completely new room, but that change-up was a bit too visually obvious, and we eventually realized that chopping up the room was the answer.
Sagt ihr dazu auch irgendwas?
When I prototyped this part, there was going to be a shadow of a monster on the wall that turned out to be a bunch of random objects when the lights turned on. The shadow always looked silly though, so eventually the reveal became the blood actually being red paint.
Na gut, das habe ich ja verstanden. Ich will so wenig wie möglich mehrmals hier durchlaufen müssen. Deshalb, das Ende ist ja so gut wie hier hinten gewesen, ne? Kommt dann noch irgendwas? Nee, okay. Das heißt, ich kann nochmal der Flachfigur folgen. um an das Stock-Ending zu kommen. Vielleicht ist da ja nämlich auch noch ein interessanter Kommentar. Also wollten die zuerst einfach nur ein Monster sozusagen erscheinen lassen. Und haben sich dann aber dazu entschieden, weil das schlecht ausgesehen hätte, mit Objekten einen Monsterschatten zu erstellen. Die rote Farbe zu nehmen, die als Blut fungieren sollte. Dann gucken wir jetzt noch beim Doc-Ende, ob es da irgendwelche interessanten Kommentare gibt, aber ich befürchte fast nein. Ich glaube, ich laufe hier umsonst lang.
Door opening.
Ja, ich laufe umsonst hier lang. Aber gut, dann kann ich direkt nach dem Dings starten. Zusätzliche Modi, Entwicklerkommentar, genau, abklonen.
Hello, and welcome to the Superliminal Developer Commentary.
Ja.
I'm Albert.
Hi, I'm Logan, and I'm level designer on Superliminal. We wanted to do a unique alarm clock for each level, but this is the only one that survived that idea.
Ach, ihr wolltet mehrere verschiedene Wecker machen. Ja, aber warum? Warum hat's nur der eine reingeschafft?
Part of breaking expectations is changing your definition of an object. A door, which usually keeps people out, becomes a flight of stairs if it is cloned enough times.
Ja, damit hat man nicht gerechnet. Im ersten Moment.
Attention. Dr. Pierce requires you to note the following risks.
Hi, my name's Chris. I was the producer and designer on Superliminal.
Both quantitative and qualitative.
Yeah, so this right-click to return sign that I bet you didn't even notice is one of the most unread signs in the game. It comes up later, and it's also one of the most unread signs in the game there too.
Also mir ist es aufgefallen damals. Dadurch habe ich ja nur überhaupt erst verstanden, dass es geht. Oh, machen die irgendeinen Kommentar zu dem Smiley? Wo man nicht mal... So ist es verboten zurückzugehen. Erst wenn man ins Schwarze guckt.
Let's talk about the smiley face. Because our goal was to break people's expectations, we prototyped a lot of weird moments like these. Some of them didn't work because they felt too meta. They would actually take people out of the game experience. This one, however, stayed because it was just subtle enough and playful enough that you could see it as a bout of insanity.
Ja.
Aside from the core resizing mechanic, I think cloning the objects is one of the more immediately enjoyable mechanics that we put into the game. When we ran playtests, this one would always have people smiling.
Ach, das ist doch der Song von den Credits. So. Kein Kommentar dazu. Krass.
Warning. Dr. Pierce is frantically submitting numerous spelling and grammar mistakes into the standard orientation protocol in a desperate attempt to counsel you. I have no subroutine to correct these errors, but I cannot compromise the integrity of the standard orientation protocol. You will not receive these messages. They would not make sense regardless.
Ein Entwicklerkommentar hier oben. Puh. Ich hätte da einen hingesetzt.
Attention. Dr. Pierce continues to input significant errors.
Hi, my name is Ryan, and I was the principal artist on Superliminal.
Introductions are redundant. I am a real
Players
doctor
may
who
notice the
works
motif of the
for
repeating purple
people who
hallway,
never
found
made a
throughout
mistake.
Clone.
I can help
We
you
wanted the
by
player to have
letting
this
you
feeling
know
of,
how.
have I been here before?
Transmission
This seems
ends.
pretty familiar. But we didn't want it to be too easy, or to be 100% unclear. So we introduced differences such as lighting, prop placement, and hallway length. That way, for most players, it was something chewing away at the back of their minds, as opposed to being blatantly obvious.
Hi, this is Will O'Neill, and I was the writer on Superliminal.
Ja.
Lots of credit here to Max Hoarth, who plays the role of Dr. Glenn Pierce, for really nailing this bizarre line in an impressively short number of takes. We were totally prepared to have him record the words in like their logical order and rearrange them after the fact, but his performance of doing it correctly, incorrectly, was phenomenal.
Hello, name is my Pierce Dr. Glenn. To the Somnosculpt Welcome Experience, team of your care leader, patient years 10 development. Conditions struggle you whatever with? Professional invention. A science with cutting, a tomorrow can bright. And buts, no ifs, or luck good.
Ja. Also krass, dass der das wirklich so falsch richtig vorgelesen hat. Beziehungsweise eingesprochen hat. Genau, hier die beiden Räume habe ich ja geöffnet.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and I'd like to discuss the assumption that secret or out-of-the-way locations ought to contain valuable knowledge instead of pipes filled with squandered human potential. They usually don't. If you think about it, they probably shouldn't. It's bad design.
Cool, hier sind alle Blaupausen, die wir gefunden haben, aufgehangen.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and in addition to the occasional puzzle generated by your mind, you may also repeatedly see images of things that you obsessively dislike, such as avocados. We believe this happens because you're obsessed with them.
Und das ist so ein guter Hinweis auf die Änderung, also wie man seine Ansicht auf Dinge ändern sollte. Nicht auf die negativen Dinge so extrem versteifen und fokussieren. Weil sie einem dann nur noch mehr auffallen.
This room kind of happened by accident. We originally just put a cloud video texture as placeholder as a way to expand on the cloud motif. It ended up working so well and fitting the tone so well that we made this a private theater room in the sleep clinic. It evokes a nostalgic and relaxing but slightly creepy feeling which seemed to fit the game perfectly.
Ja, unheimlich hätte ich jetzt nicht gesagt, aber sonst gebe ich recht.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce. This is a notification that you have reappeared on our monitoring system after a prolonged absence. Please continue to do whatever you did most recently, and discontinue whatever you were doing immediately prior to that.
Wie, kein Kommentar hierzu? Auch nicht innerhalb des Hauses? Ah, doch.
Hey, this is Matt. I did the music and sound. The sound effects that probably took the most tweaking were definitely all associated with the resizable objects. For them, I had to make a collision matrix so that the sound of you dropping a box or a cube would smoothly change from its smallest to its largest size and anywhere in between. So to achieve that, there were lots of different layers of the sounds, lots of automated pitch shifting, speeding up, slowing down, lots of crossfading between different layers of the sound, and a lot of trial and error to get it feeling right inside the game.
Ich glaube, dass das Arbeit war. Bestes Beispiel hier. Perfektes Beispiel.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce. In addition to continuing and discontinuing as mentioned earlier, please also disregard any unsettling experiences that you may have recently had. Everything should have now reverted to being soothing and therapeutic. If this is not the case, you may be receiving this message in error.
Es ist so random, wie die Dinger hier fallen. Kein Entwicklerkommentar. So. Hallo? Da. So. Ein bisschen größer kann schon sein. Die haben nichts dazu zu sagen? Okay.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and I'd like to read you my favorite inspirational quote by me.
This puzzle existed for a long time, but it took a while to figure out what the art was going to be because the bouncy castle used to just be a weird L-shaped block. Eventually, we landed on the pool motif and the bouncy castle and added a little bit where you go inside the vent.
Everything you've ever held dear. Whatever you do, don't focus on that.
So. Das hier ist also schon recht alt, das Rätsel.
Because we have portals that you can resize, the player can freely change their own size. This actually created a design problem because you could never predict what size the player was supposed to be. And if we dynamically changed the size of the geometry later on in the level, things could break really easily. So instead, we added these portals, like this doorway over here, which changes size in order to resize you back to the normal scale of a human.
Anyway, you're now headed in the right direction, and we should be able to initiate the emergency exit protocol shortly.
Changing the player size through portals has a couple of weird side effects when it comes to programming. You have the obvious ones, such as needing to change the player collider, movement speed, jump height, and mantling distance. You have a couple of less obscure ones, such as needing to change the camera's far and near clip planes, so geometry is less likely to clip through your camera as you get smaller. Another interesting one we'll talk. Another weird thing about player resizing is that gravity is actually constant. Changing the player size through portals has a couple of weird side effects when it comes to programming. You have the obvious ones, such as needing to change the player collider, movement speed, jump height, and mantling distance. You have a couple of less obscure ones, such as needing to change the camera's far and near clip planes, so geometry is less likely to clip through your camera as you get smaller. Another interesting one we'll talk about later. Another weird thing about player resizing is that gravity is actually constant across all sizes. So imagine you're in the perspective of an ant, and a giant shoe is coming down from the sky to step on you. That shoe in your mind might take a couple seconds, but in real life, it would be instant. Whatever size you are, large objects traveling through space should feel like they are moving slowly. So when we change the player size, we're actually also adjusting gravity in order to compensate for this as well. This is physically incorrect, but this feels better for the player.
Okay. Hilfe! Hilfe! Ah, danke. Ich will mich... Beziehungsweise, Moment, ich kann mich doch so umgucken in der Größe. Ist hier irgendwo noch ein Entwicklerkommentar? Nee, okay.
So that's my cat. His name is Finn, and he's a good boy. And we only had a day or two left before finishing the game, and we needed to figure out what kind of posters to put in our elevators. So I decided to have a little bit of fun with it, and this is by far my favorite, of course. The Cardboard Lovers Association also makes a nice little nod to the cardboard dollhouse.
Wie cool!
So that's my cat. His name is Finn, and he's a good boy. And
Es wird damals gar nicht aufgefallen.
The emergency exit protocol is the shortest lived character in the game, but my heart really goes out to him. Because just like a triangle player in an orchestra, he has precisely one job and he waits patiently for his moment to do it, only of course to have it snatched away just as that moment arrives. I think many people can identify with this feeling.
Error analysis complete. You are exhibiting signs consistent with an increase in fear, hopelessness, and frustration. This is inconceivable, as somnasculpt therapy is proven to correlate with a decrease in these emotions. Hypothesis: patient was improperly oriented. Conclusion: impossible. Reformulating. Improved hypothesis: patient requires additional somnasculpt therapy. Conclusion: emergency exit protocol cannot proceed. Emergency exit protocol has been emergency destroyed.
Einem Charakter, dass dem die Sache vor der Nase weggeschnappt
Continue
wurde.
with somnasculpt therapy indefinitely on an independent basis, as all orientation resources have been exhausted. This concludes your standard orientation protocol. Goodbye.
Ja, ja. Da haben die schon was Gutes entwickelt. Das muss ich denen echt lassen. Wie ich schon gesagt habe, merkt man sehr, dass sie Spaß dabei hatten. Ist hier irgendwo ein Kommentar? Nein? Okay. Bis hierhin kein Kommentar. Warum nicht?
Hello.
Habt ihr nichts
My
dazu
name
zu
is
sagen?
Dr. Glenn Pierce. Thank you for completing the Somnosculpt Standard Orientation Protocol. Before you begin the first phase of therapy, I'd like to briefly describe the finite and fragile nature of the dream state.
We had all these surprise moments prototyped, and so I wondered what it would feel like if we had a whole level of surprise moments. I wanted it to be fast-paced. The working title for this level is Chase. This is the boss level of the game, basically. It's inspired by the third act of the movie Brazil, how it gets crazier and faster paced over time.
Ja, wenn ich will nach da oben gucken. Na komm. Wie habe ich denn das damals geschafft? Machen wir es halt so. Ah, ja, klar, so kriege ich den Winkel hin. Da haben die doch bestimmt auch was, oder? Nein? Nichts? Schade. Weil das hier hieß zuerst also Jagd. Aber so passend ist das nicht. Labyrinth passt da deutlich besser.
Of course, nothing is more challenging than the difficulty of changing perspective, of fundamentally altering your perceptions in a way that will enable you to face dire, trial-by-fire scenarios with solutions that could not be found otherwise.
The music throughout the game really goes through a significant transformation, but the piano is always there to guide you. Even as the music becomes darker and more electronic, it always has the melody, or at least a really significant role to play. It changes as you progress through the game. I switched to different types of piano, starting out with a piano Bill Evans famously recorded on. Later, switching to a more modern sounding instrument. I double it with prepared piano sounds sometimes, I use felt piano, and gradually more reverbs and delays as the game evolves. But at the heart of each piece is the piano.
Kein Kommentar zu der blöden Stelle. Die hatte mich nämlich eigentlich ziemlich hart drangenommen damals. Ach, da ist wieder das Smiley drauf.
Finally, while we respect the unique progress of every patient, you must understand that it is possible to
Hi there,
complete
I'm Steve, I'm the art director of Superliminal.
thereby entering a state in which you will
The original idea for Labyrinth was to explore earlier areas, but with a new spin on them. Sometimes it was a matter of adding new interactive moments to turn things on their head, while for others, we would take existing locales and give them a new look of paint and set dressing. Something familiar, yet fresh and unexpected.
That instability is perfect for the mood and for general world building too. Conceptually, different patients will be bringing different experiences with them into the dream state, and we wanted to reflect that.
Noch irgendein Kommentar hierzu? Nee, ne?
Hi, my name is Phil Fortier, and I was the graphics programmer on Superliminal, and I also worked on some of the
Du
Easter egg
bist das
design.
wieder. Mit demselben Kommentar.
So one day, for whatever reason, I was looking up reference material for astral planes on the internet, and one of the results was the astral plane that appears in the TV show The OA. And at the same time, we were trying to figure out different optical illusions we could use for the Easter eggs that were different from the main gameplay. And the astral plane in the OA has stars and a reflective floor.
Gehört.
And so that was kind of the inspiration for
dir.
the star rooms
Bitte.
here.
Ich hab's schon mal
And
gehört.
the goal for these was that they would be hidden in plain sight, so you could play through the game and not even notice them if you're not being careful and observant. But if you look around, then you might find one.
Es gab vieles,
The
was
way
man
we
nur
made the
gefunden hat,
star
wenn man...
rooms try to fit into the game narrative is that Dr. Pierce, while designing these dream levels, it's a lot of work, so occasionally he would need to take a break, just lie down.
Danke.
So when I joined the project, this infinite elevator sequence wasn't actually infinite. It was just a very large block of, 20 by 10 elevators. And the performance, as a result, wasn't very good. And the illusion could be ruined if you walked all the way to one side. So one of the things I did was actually make it infinite. So there's a much smaller block of real elevators, and the player gets teleported seamlessly by portals on each end. And so the end result is an infinite elevator sequence that you can just go in one direction forever.
Cool. Man kommt wirklich... Es ist wirklich unendlich. Und man kommt immer wieder durch den einen Raum. Cool. So cool. Genauso wie das hier alles immer in dem Winkel einfach nur gemalt ist.
Use listen carefully for the sound of an alarm clock, which will automatically play if you are approaching a destabilizing dream weight.
Mhm. Das Spiel ist halt echt cool gemacht. Man kriegt immer und immer wieder so ein Was? Oha! Oh, wie cool! Moment. Na komm. Lass mich doch bitte noch mal darauf. Nö, das Spiel sagt nein. Schade. Na ja, egal. Ich habe eh nichts gesehen da drauf jetzt. Und jetzt kommt der White Space.
So coming up with the way to actually make the portal and a portal make sense for the player was a really tough problem. And we iterated on this for weeks with input from all different team members. So it was really a group effort. But it was important to get it right because this is one of the pivotal moments in the game. And then another thing we had to do was figure out how to make the world degrade in a way that fit with the game's look and feel. And one day while prototyping, I just happened to accidentally assign a light map texture to one of the walls in the room, and I really liked the way it looked. Light map textures are textures generated by the engine offline to help with realistic lighting. So anyway, we ended up using this. So when the world degrades, the shafts of light breaking through the walls into the rooms, and that effect is actually driven by a light map texture from one of the other levels.
Mhm. Wobble, 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 wobble.
Please paradox from creating any refrains. Explosive dream overload may result. Please paradox overload. Please overload from dream explosion. X conclusion dream overcall frame.
Und plötzlich ist man im White Space.
This spatio-temporal moment of wonder is brought to you by the very long but invisible rectangular portals tucked behind these empty windows, looking out into other parts of the level you may soon travel to.
Ah, I see. I see what happened there.
This final level was designed with the idea of removing depth perception entirely. All the visuals are flattened.
And many years ago, I had a dream. I found myself in a place where I understood that each of us begins as nothing, where everything I perceived was shaped by seeing it exactly the way I wanted to. White space.
Ja, die Tiefenwahrnehmung ist tatsächlich komplett zerstört. Mit Ausnahme halt von Türen oder so, die da näher kommen. Frag mich nur, warum hier der Raum so laggt. Weil das kann nicht an meinem PC liegen. An dem liegt es auch nicht.
The blueprints are one of the secrets that we add to the game, and if you find them all, you'll unlock a special secret. The diagrams are actually top-down, wireframe views of parts of the levels, and they're blue.
Und sie ist blau.
Since the universe that the players inhabit is seemingly created in almost a kitbash way while within Somnosculpt, it was a unique challenge to show the players truly a peek behind the curtains of the system. A blank canvas, a scratch document, an empty sticky note with some notes, little things creatively interspersed throughout. I think I derived some of the inspiration for what happens when you're playing a VR game and suddenly the game crashes to a totally white space. That feeling of disorientation, even though you understand the world around you is an illusion.
Mhm. Ich denke, ich habe verstanden. Sorry guys, das war nicht mein
Negative
Plan.
space is another concept related to changing expectations and changing your perceptions of an object. This puzzle works really well because the solution is obvious in retrospect, but it takes people a couple of seconds in order to figure out. We actually had to add the looping hallway because without it, people would run out of things to do and immediately start rubbing their bodies against the walls and come to the solution almost immediately.
Würden ihre Körper an den Wänden reiben. What? Why?
You're well beyond dreaming now, and further out than anyone has ever come back from. But we hope that you won't get discouraged. After all, if this is a place of pure perspective, isn't it also a place where a different point of view could make anything possible? Isn't that why you came here?
Und ganz nebenbei... Da oben... Nee, da oben ist er nicht. Da oben ist der Raum, wo man Schach spielen kann. Da muss ich dann gleich auch noch was machen. Der Raum hat mich so viele Male dran gekriegt. Das war echt gemein. Hier der Raum war doch interessant. Dafür gibt es keinen Kommentar. Schade. Naja, die Gedankengänge der Entwickler spiegeln tatsächlich das Erlebnis, was man selbst hat, wider. Hier noch ein Kommentar? Nein? Okay.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and by now you may have realized that all of this has happened exactly the way it was supposed to.
This last section was something that Logan and I worked together on for a really long time. When I first saw it, I had this great feeling for how it could be like a really nice, impactful moment. And so I got this really kind of awe-inspiring, inspirational music to put behind it. And Logan absolutely hated it. I stuck to my guns and asked him to stick with it for a while and play it for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, and see how things went. And he ended up totally coming around to my side of thinking. Initially, we were unsure if we went for this kind of pure feeling that it would just be really hokey. And I ended up reading this essay on television written by David Foster Wallace. And it really kind of encouraged me to kind of get over that sort of postmodern, too cool for anything aesthetic, and to just really go gung-ho into sort of rewarding you for ending the game by giving you something really nice.
This level was created early on. I liked the idea of giving the player some time to think about their journey rather than ending the game immediately, and I knew film-like cuts would be perfect for revisiting their experience through the game. Chris initially suggested a song for reference, and at first I hated it. I kept listening to it though, and eventually grew to love the song. Matt came up with a track that is even better than the reference material, and it fit perfectly.
Your life will always be a struggle, and you will always have problems. But today, you have the chance to see things differently. Even though it meant facing obstacles that seemed impossible at first, you thought outside the box, and you overcame them. Because you saw things from every angle, you understood them for what they really were. Because you kept moving forward, no matter how far off the path you were told you were headed, or how unexpected it became, you found your way.
Ja, das habe ich wohl.
In a few minutes, you'll be back in the real world. And some part of you will say that none of this was real. So how could it have really meant anything? But just like the power of perspective itself, it will have been as real as you believed it to be. All you've got to do is wait up.
Größter Fan, schließe das Spiel mit aktivierten Entwicklerkommentaren ab. Ja! Was soll ich großartig jetzt noch sagen? Ich habe eigentlich im Livestream und beim ersten Mal durchspielen alles gesagt, was ich zu sagen habe.
That's the game.
Yeah, and thanks for listening all the way through, if you did that.
Thank you for exploring our dreamy environments. I love you.
Oh,
Models, textures, avocados, let's see, materials, rubber duck, apples. I think that's all of the art.
And thanks for enjoying the music and sound.
And the writing.
And the code that holds everything together.
es war sehr toll gemacht. Sehr, sehr toll. Oh, was ist denn los, Lucy? Willst du kuscheln? Och ja.
Are we going to talk about the design goal of this level?
Please, do.
The goal was to show you who made the game.
Thank you.
Meine Katze, die Lucy, hat mich gerade am Ellbogen angestupst und wollte, dass ich sie knuddel und kraul. Ja, bist eine Feine. Die hat Superliminal auch gefallen, gell?
Hello, 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 hello.
Warning, the average adult can only withstand 3 to 5 hellos per night.
Absolutely.
Das ist ja cool. Das war aber nicht beim normalen drin. Oder?
Hello, 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 hello.
Dr. Glenn Pierce. This is clearly intentional.
Why do I feel like everything is going wrong?
Noted, Dr. Pierce.
Was sind das denn für coole
Hello,
Gags?
hello, hello.
Warning, this is extremely rude.
Hello, my name is...
Insignificant.
Ja, ich habe sehr gerne geträumt mit euch.
Anyway, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and I'd like to thank you
This is respectful.
because you saw things from every angle. You found your way. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
You're now headed in the right direction. All you've got to do is wake up.
Das Spiel hat wirklich ein sehr therapeutisches Erlebnis. Es hat sehr viel Spaß gemacht. Ich bin happy, dass ich es Let's Played habe, auch dass ich mir die Mühe gemacht habe, das komplett zu 100% mit allen Achievements zu machen. Ich erwarte nicht, dass dieser Part viele Aufrufe hat oder lange geguckt wird. Aber ich fand, das musste zur Vervollständigung sein. Dann bedanke ich mich an dieser Stelle vielmals fürs Zusehen. Und gab's hier nicht noch? Genau. Und sage dann mit komplett allen Achievements, die ich geholt habe. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Und ciao. Und ein frohes neues Jahr wünsche ich euch schon mal.